Josh loved to tinker. He'd always been that way, even before his diagnosis, even before they found the right therapists and the right school program and the words to explain to neighbors why he didn't always talk or look them in the eye. When he was a little kid, he'd take apart flashlights, wind up toys, old radios, whatever his dad let him scavenge. He didn't care if they worked. He cared about what was inside. His dad, Daniel, encouraged it as best he could. When Josh was 10, he got a used 3D printer off Craigslist. By 12, he was programming microcontrollers. By 14, he was making his own RC cars and drones. Daniel was so proud he could cry, watching the focus on his son's face, the way his fingers trembled with excitement when the code uploaded and the little wheels spun for the first time. They lived in a quiet subdivision outside Sacramento. Single-story homes, tidy lawns, too many SUVs, the smell of grills on weekends. It looked like the American dream, but there was always something sour in the air, and her name was Karen. Karen ran the HOA, not officially alone, mind you. There was a board, but they all deferred to her. She was the one who wrote the letters, collected the fines, updated the bylaws without asking anyone. And she had opinions about Daniel's kid.it started small. A letter about unauthorized structures. When Josh set up a portable table in the yard to test a drone. A $50 fine for yard clutter. When his RC car parts were drying on a towel, Daniel paid it. He argued once, but Karen just smiled that condescending smile and said, "We have rules for a reason." Josh didn't understand why his workspaces kept getting him in trouble. He tried to explain his projects, stimming with his hands, rocking a little, but Karen would cut him off. One afternoon, she showed up unannounced while Josh was soldering under the carport. She stood there, arms crossed. "What is this? Some kind of surveillance device?" Josh didn't answer. He froze. Daniel came out with a glass of water, saw her, felt his stomach drop. "Karen, can I help you?" She didn't look at him. "I'm asking what this is." Daniel took a breath. "It's a remote control car. My son builds them." Karen sniffed. "Well, we can't have that out here. It's disturbing the peace. Scaring people. I've had complaints." "From who?" "That's confidential." Daniel wanted to scream. Instead, he smiled tightly. "I'll handle it." She walked away without another word. Josh was blinking rapidly, trying not to cry. Daniel knelt. "Hey, buddy. It's okay. You didn't do anything wrong." Josh didn't answer. That was the start of it. After that, Karen turned it up. More fines. A warning about unauthorized gatherings. When Daniel's sister visited and parked on the street. Josh's drone went missing for 3 days. When it turned up, the camera was smashed. No proof. Just suspicion. Daniel was a district attorney. He knew how to build a case. He started documenting everything. Photos. Letters. Emails. HOA meeting minutes. He bought security cameras. He taught Josh how to back up the footage to the cloud. Josh loved that part, actually. He felt like a secret agent. But the fun didn't last. One night, Daniel woke up to find police lights flashing outside. 2 squad cars. Karen was there too, arms folded, self-satisfied smirk in place. Daniel threw on clothes and ran out barefoot. "What the hell is going on?" An officer held up a report. "Sir, we received a call about suspicious activity. A possible bomb-making operation." Daniel felt cold all over. He looked at Karen. She didn't even blink. "Excuse me?" The cop gestured toward the carport. "Your son's workshop. We need to see it." Daniel forced himself to stay calm. "He's 14. He builds RC cars and drones." The cop shrugged apologetically. "Sir, we have to check." Daniel clenched his fists. "Fine." He led them over. Josh was awake by then, peeking out from the house. Daniel shook his head slightly. "Stay inside." They opened the bins. The parts. The soldering iron. Battery packs. No bomb. No threat. Just a kid's brilliant, messy projects. Karen watched it all with that pinched expression, like she smelled something bad. Looks like hobby stuff, the officer finally said. Daniel's voice was ice. Because it is. They left without charges. Karen stayed behind. I hope you understand, she said sweetly. We just want to keep the neighborhood safe. Daniel didn't say anything. He was afraid of what he might say. After they left, he went inside. Josh was crying. It's my fault. They think I'm dangerous. I didn't mean. Daniel pulled him close. None of this is your fault. Do you hear me? None of it. Josh shook all over, fingers digging into Daniel's back. They sat on the floor a long time. After that, Josh stopped going outside to work. He stayed in his room. Daniel heard the software of the 3D printer, but the project slowed. His teacher emailed, worried. Daniel emailed back, vague but polite. He didn't want to admit what was happening. He felt like he'd failed his son. But he wasn't done yet. He started digging deeper. He pulled the HOA's public filings. He filed Freedom of Information requests. He found that the HOA had no actual vote on half the new rules Karen enforced. He found budget gaps. Checks signed only by Karen. Vendors with no business license. He made spreadsheets. He talked to neighbors. At first they were scared. Karen was good at that. She'd given them all fines at one point or another. But some were angry. 2.1-old guy named Frank had been fined $200 for having his grandkids' bikes on the lawn. A single mom, Denise, had been threatened with a lien over weeds in the planter. Daniel showed them the documents. They got mad. They started meeting quietly. They passed around the records Daniel found. They wrote a petition. Daniel kept it all above board. He knew the law. Karen didn't see it coming. When the next HOA meeting came around, they packed the little community center. Karen looked surprised when she walked in and saw all the chairs filled. Daniel sat front and center, arms crossed. Josh was there too, head down, fingers twisting his hoodie string, but he was there. Karen cleared her throat. Let's get started. Daniel stood up. I have some questions first. She tried to wave him off. Mr. Thompson, you're out of order, actually, he said calmly. I'm a homeowner. I'm perfectly in order. And I have the floor. People cheered. Karen blinked. Daniel opened his folder. He read out the budget discrepancies, the unapproved rule changes, the contractor invoices with no record of work done. He handed copies to neighbors. He laid it all out. Karen's face went red. She sputtered. That's privileged information. It's public record under our HOA bylaws. Daniel corrected. Silence. Someone coughed. Frank said loudly, I want my $200 back. Denise added, Yeah, me too. Daniel held up his phone. I've contacted the county, the state HOA oversight office, and law enforcement. Karen went pale. The board members shifted in their seats. Someone in the back laughed. Karen tried to regain control. Let's move to adjourn. No, Daniel said. Not until we vote to suspend you pending investigation. He had the petition, signed by 60% of the homeowners. Karen's mouth worked soundlessly. Daniel smiled without warmth. Let's vote. They did. It wasn't even close. Karen was out. She stormed out of the room, pushing past people, muttering about suing everyone. And no one followed her. Josh sat there shaking, wide-eyed. Daniel put a hand on his shoulder. It's over. Josh didn't say anything, but for the first time in months he smiled. The meeting ended late. People lingered in little clusters outside, talking in hushed, amazed voices. Daniel shook so many hands he lost count. They thanked him. They asked what was next. He said calmly, We're going to do this right. He walked home with Josh, the boy's thin frame shivering in the cool night. Josh hadn't spoken since they left. Halfway home, Daniel stopped. He squatted down, looking Josh in the eyes. You did good tonight. Josh didn't meet his gaze. He whispered. They were all looking at me. I know. And you stayed? That was brave. Josh swallowed. Will Karen come back? Daniel exhaled. Not if I can help it. They got home and fell asleep like stones. The next day, Daniel called in a personal day from work. He spent the morning typing a formal complaint to the county's HOA oversight office. He attached the evidence. He CC'd the board members. By lunch, he received 3 nervous phone calls from the remaining board. They wanted to talk. He agreed to meet that evening. The meeting was in Frank's garage. In O'Karen this time. Just 5 of them sitting on folding chairs with Daniel at the head of an old card table. He laid it out methodically. You all signed off on budgets you didn't check. You let Karen bully you. You let her write rules on her own. That's over. They squirmed. One of them, Nancy, a retired teacher, wiped her eyes. She threatened to fine me too. Said she'd embarrass me. Daniel's face softened. I know. That's what people like her do. But it's done now. You're going to fix it. They asked him to help. He smiled grimly. Oh, I'm going to help a lot. They spent 3 hours drafting a plan. A forensic audit, refunding unfair fines, suspending new rules until a proper vote, setting the next election date for the board. Daniel took the secretary's notes himself to make sure they were accurate. When he got home, Josh was asleep on the couch with his laptop open beside him. On screen was a 3D model of a new drone. Daniel sat down and watched him breathe. The next week was a whirlwind. Karen tried to fight. She sent cease and desist letters. She posted ranting screeds on Nextdoor. She called Daniel at work, shrieking about slander. He recorded everything. He stayed calm. He let her hang herself when she showed up at his door unannounced. Josh blinked. He almost smiled. Daniel felt a knot loosen in his chest. The audit took weeks. Daniel insisted it be done by a neutral CPA. He found one. A local woman, retired IRS. She didn't miss anything. Karen had stolen over $42,000. False maintenance invoices, unapproved landscaping projects that were just checks written to herself. The final report was a bombshell. The board had no choice. They called an emergency vote. Karen's membership was revoked. They filed charges with the county. Daniel attended every meeting. He never shouted. He never threatened. He just read the facts. One by one, the board fell in line. The sheriff's office got involved. Karen was arrested for fraud, embezzlement, and harassment. The local paper picked it up. The headline made Daniel wince. Neighborhood tyrant taken down by DA Dad. But Josh cut it out and taped it to his wall. Daniel smiled when he saw that. He didn't say anything, just patted his son's shoulder. After Karen's arrest, things got better. Slowly, the fines were refunded, the bylaws were revised. The HOA board held open meetings where anyone could speak. They even let Daniel chair the rules committee for a while. He made sure every change got a real vote. Josh came back outside. He started using the carport again. Kids from the street would wander over, watching him solder, asking questions. He'd answer quietly, shyly, but he answered. Daniel watched from the window. Heart full. One weekend they hosted a barbecue. Daniel grilled burgers. Josh set up a drone demo. Neighbors applauded as it zipped and hovered and did flips. Frank said, "Kid's a genius." Josh went red but grinned so hard his face hurt. Denise brought pie. Her daughter drew chalk designs on Daniel's driveway, spelling out, "Josh is cool." It felt like they were a community again. But Daniel knew it wasn't over. One afternoon, a reporter called him. She was following up on the story. "Did you know?" she said. "We're seeing this in other neighborhoods too. Same kind of scams." Daniel felt cold. "Same how?" She rattled off details. Fake fines. Boards run by one bully. Stolen funds. Intimidation. IT was a pattern. A network. Daniel leaned back in his chair. He thought of Karen, the venom in her voice. When she threatened him, she'd always acted so confident, so sure the rules would protect her. He wondered who else had taught her how to do it. He told the reporter everything. He gave her copies of his evidence. He asked the oversight board for a meeting. They listened. They asked him to help them draft new state guidelines for HOA oversight. He agreed. It felt strange, getting pulled into politics. He'd always thought of himself as a small-town guy. But he remembered Josh crying on the floor. He remembered the police in his driveway, shining flashlights in his son's eyes. He remembered Karen's laughter. And no one else's kid was going to go through that if he could help it. He didn't do it alone. Frank joined him. Denise too. They testified at hearings. They helped organize other neighborhoods to vote out corrupt boards. They even made a website explaining homeowners' rights in plain English. Daniel's county supervisor called him a hero once. He hated that word. He wasn't a hero. He was a dad. That was enough. Through it all, Josh kept building. One day Daniel came home late from work. He walked into the carport and found Josh surrounded by neighborhood kids, all watching him carefully soldering a new board. Daniel cleared his throat. Josh looked up. "Hey, Dad. I'm teaching them." Daniel swallowed hard. He nodded. "Good. That's good." Josh smiled. He didn't look away. He didn't hide. He was home. Weeks turned into months. Summer came. Hot, bright, sticky. Josh spent whole afternoons outside, setting up folding tables with tools laid out like a tiny workshop. Other kids came to help him. Or just to watch. Some brought their own broken toys. He fixed them. Sometimes with dramatic new mods. A little RC truck came back with tank treads. A busted quadcopter flew better than new. Josh didn't talk much, but the kids didn't mind. They loved him. Parents walked by and smiled. Daniel got home one evening and found 2 cars parked outside his house that he didn't recognize. Inside the carport, Josh was patiently showing a high schooler how to solder. Daniel watched from the driveway for a long moment. He could hardly believe this was the same kid who used to hide in his room when someone knocked. When he finally walked in, Josh glanced up. "Hey, Dad," he said, steady. Daniel grinned. He nodded at the teenagers. "Josh teaching you all to be NASA engineers?" They laughed. Josh actually rolled his eyes. "Dad." Daniel patted his shoulder on the way in. He went to the kitchen, cracked a beer, sat at the table. He let himself relax. He was so damn proud. It was quiet for a moment. He could hear Josh explaining how capacitors worked in his flat, serious voice, interrupted by amazed oohs. Daniel closed his eyes. He let himself see why. It wasn't sad. It was relief. It was gratitude. He wiped his face before anyone saw. That summer the HOA held its new elections. Daniel didn't want to run, but the neighbors insisted. He won. With 92% of the vote, Josh made him a little 3D printed trophy that said, "Big Boss." Daniel kept it on the dashboard of his car. The first thing he did as president was pass a transparency rule. Every meeting would be public. No secret votes. No fines without evidence, and appeal. He invited the local paper to sit in. Frank was elected vice president. Denise became secretary. The meetings were awkward at first. And no one knew what to say, but they kept showing up. They kept talking. Slowly it became normal. Daniel found he liked the work. He liked knowing what the neighborhood needed, fixing the front gate, scheduling the lawn service better, making sure people got help if they fell behind on dues. And no more fear. Just neighbors figuring things out together. He never forgot how it felt before. He made sure no one forgot. He kept a folder with all the old fines Karen had issued. He'd hold it up at meetings. "Never again," he'd say. People would nod. They believed him. Because they remembered too. The county finished prosecuting Karen. She pled out eventually. 3 years probation, community service, full restitution. Daniel didn't celebrate when he heard. He just felt tired. He hoped she learned something. He didn't think she would. But it wasn't his job to hate her. He had work to do. The state task force on HOA reform invited him to speak. He flew to the Capitol. First time on a plane in years. He sat in the hearing room in his best suit. He hated suits, but he wore it for Josh. For the neighborhood. He told the committee about the night police nearly arrested his son for playing with an RC car, about the fines, about the stolen money. about the fear. He made sure they understood it wasn't just about Karen. It was about every HOA that forgot it served the people living there. He watched a few lawmakers shift uncomfortably. Good. They should. When he flew home, Josh picked him up at the airport. He'd grown taller that year. He even hugged Daniel, stiff and awkward. Daniel hugged him back. They didn't say much on the drive. They didn't have to. Back in their neighborhood, things weren't perfect. They still had arguments, fights over paint colors, disputes about barking dogs. But people talked to each other. They knocked on doors instead of sending fines. They invited each other over. Josh walked around freely now. Neighbors waved. He waved back. He even went trick-or-treating that Halloween. First time in years. Daniel bought him a white lab coat so he could be mad scientist Josh. They laughed about it all month. Josh made a little smoke machine out of an old vape battery and tubing. He had the scariest costume on the block. Daniel took pictures. He framed one on his desk at work. He kept looking at it. When his cases got heavy, he remembered why he fought. Winter came. They strung lights on the carport. Josh designed a timer so they blinked in rhythm to music. Neighbors started bringing over extra strands. By Christmas, the whole street lit up like Times Square. Frank dressed as Santa for the kids. Denise brought cookies. They sang carols. Daniel nearly choked up watching Josh sing, off-key, but trying. And one teased him. They clapped and cheered. They handed him the last cookie on the plate. When spring came again, Daniel realized they'd gone a whole year without a single harassment complaint. And threats. And fear. He thought about that sometimes. How close they'd come to losing it all. How easy it would have been to give in.to move away. To let Karen win. He was so glad he hadn't. One afternoon, as he was trimming the hedge, a car he didn't recognize pulled up. A woman in a smart blazer stepped out. She introduced herself as an investigator from the new state HOA task force. She said she'd been reading his testimony. "We're finding the same scams everywhere," she said. Daniel sighed. He wasn't surprised. She asked if he'd help train new HOA boards. Teach them how to run things fairly. He scratched his chin. "Only if you promise to pay me in barbecue," he joked. She laughed, but she handed him a card. He said he'd think about it. That night he sat on the porch watching the sunset. Josh was in the carport with friends again, laughing about something. Daniel sipped iced tea. He thought about everything they'd been through. He thought about what that investigator said. Same scams everywhere. He felt a familiar anger, but he also felt something else. Resolve. Because he remembered something important. They'd beaten it here. They could beat it anywhere. When Josh finished for the night, he wandered over and sat next to him. They watched the last of the orange light fade. Josh leaned his head on Daniel's shoulder. He didn't do that much anymore. Daniel didn't say anything. He just sat there. He knew it wasn't over. There